All right, so we're talking about fixed stars today. So fixed stars are like another layer. So earlier when you guys were looking at the kind of professional software that I use and you were like, oh my gosh, there's a lot here. It's because there are the main planets, but there are also some other things like fixed points, nodes, and also fixed stars you can use to kind of like fine tune a chart. So the planets are the broad strokes, and then there's ways to kind of flesh out that picture a little bit. And I think the fixed stars help do that. So just move this down. Great. So what we're going to talk about today are a little bit about the fixed stars and then two main groups of fixed stars that are primarily the ones that I use. They're called the royal stars and the Bohemian stars. And then we're going to look at chart examples for each star. Then we're going to talk about the current weather. And a lot is going on in November. So yeah, let's talk about that. All right. So why use fixed stars? Like, we got planets, why there's a lot of stars in the sky, like why do we need to pick out some of them? So when we think about the sun, that's a star, and that's kind of like the center of our universe. Sun sign astrology is popular for a reason. Charts are nuanced, and as much as us that are super into astrology are like, there's a whole chart, you're not just your sun sign. Like, you can do a lot with your sun sign, which is why sun sign astrology is so popular. And it just like blows my mind sometimes when I think about how like every star in the sky is like, you know, if you believe there's other life out there, it's like someone's sun. So I think we like in our day-to-day minutia kind of forget that the universe is this like huge wondrous place, and that every star is like the sun. Like, I don't know, sometimes I think about that in my mind, just like, I don't know, it's like hard to wrap your mind around. And there are some stars in particular that like pretty much every culture in the world has been like, oh, this star is important. So just like, you know, ancient cultures were able to kind of ascribe similar attributes to each of the planets, they're able to do that with some of the stars as well. So just some facts about them. Just like the planets, the stars do move throughout the sky, but it's super slow, like 1 degree every 72 years. So if you see one change signs, that's like something really special to see in your lifetime. There are so many stars in the sky. So
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Megan. Did you say 1 degree every how many years? 100?
72.
72. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Ish, of course. So yeah, there are so many stars in the sky. Do I have to know about all of them? No. There's like 150, a little under 150 that people like use a lot. And even of that, I think that's a lot to deal with. Like, some people get really into fixed stars and it just resonates with you. I've included some resources at the end that I think would be really great for you to look in further. But I'm showing you in this presentation the ones that I use because I think they're helpful, not to say that you won't find other ones helpful in your practice. And the other ones might be like directly conjunct an aspect in one of your charts. So then the orbs and influence. So for you new people, an orb is how close a planet needs to be in order for an aspect to count. So when there are two planets in the same sign, they say that they're like in the same sign together, but they don't make a conjunction unless they're close. And how many degrees depends on the planet. So the sun, because it's so big, it's like 15 degrees. But Mercury, I think it's like 6 degrees. But a fixed star, it's like 1 degree. Some of them up to 3, but I usually look at it like it needs to be super close, like 1.5 degree. There is one that the orb is a little bit larger, and I will talk about that when it happens, but it's like huge impact, but like super narrow focus. And the reason why I think fixed stars are important to talk about is that I do think they changed the signification in the sign that they're in. So for example, we're going to talk about this one fixed star, Antares, which is the heart of the Scorpion, and it's in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius and Scorpio have like really different significations. So when a planet is conjunct Antares in Sagittarius and like has this Scorpio like martial quality, I think that's really important to know. And you like feel that and you'd be like, yeah, I always wondered why that felt a little bit different than when I just read about like Sun in Sagittarius, for example. All right. So these are the stars we're going to talk about. We're talking even less than this in detail. So we're going to talk about the royal stars and then a few of the Bohemian stars. So if you are into astrological magic, like I am, the Bohemian stars are really important because you can make like astrological talismans and like do all this cool stuff with them. And again, we're talking about that a little bit here, but like astrological magic is like a whole thing and takes a while to really learn about. So if that's on your radar, you want to sign up for a course with that, or you want to look into Nina Griffin. She's a really great astrologer for astrological magic. Or if you're interested in some of the conferences, I know the upcoming NORWAC conference, there's like a few talks this year about astrological magic. So it's becoming more prevalent and there's a lot of cool books coming out about it. So that's something that you're interested, there's a lot more resources. And so that's why people talk about the Bohemian stars. All right. So the royal stars, these are like the big four that definitely people pay a lot of attention to. Let me see if I put something else here. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, the royal stars, just remove this. Okay, so they're really bright in the sky, and they like back in the like long time ago, like 3,000 years ago, they used to align with the equinoxes and the solstices. So they were really important in astrological practice for that reason. But there's all these like romanticization of these stars. People like that are really into like Christianity talk about how they're associated with like four angels or the four horsemen of the apocalypse. They're talked about as the guardians of the sky. So if you have one of these conjunct an aspect in your or a planet or one of the angles of your chart, it's like a big deal. And a lot of like famous people have significant aspects with one of these stars, which I just find really interesting. Okay, so the first one is Aloe Deveran, which is the Watcher of the East. And these little symbols that I put here in the astrological talismans for the Bohemian stars, these are the symbols associated with them. And 3 out of the 4 royal stars are also Bohemian stars. So Aldebaran is called, it's in the constellation of Taurus, and it's the eye of the bull. And it, so also like almost every star that we talk about is going to have partially a nature of Mars, which I just find really interesting. And if you look at the ancient texts, a lot of them are like very like harsh. So if you go look at this on your own, like don't just be like, oh my god, like all of them say I'm gonna die. Like no, the ancient astrologers were just like a little intense. So they would give the most egregious example of like a possible ramification from a star, and then just would assume that you as the astrologer knew how to bring nuance to that. But it can be like a little scary if you read it and you're like, why do all these stars say like all these really intense things about me? So Aldebaran, like a lot of these royal stars, bestows a lot of great gifts, most notably like charisma and the ability to like achieve a lot. But there's always a caution with this and a lot of the other stars that if you become like too greedy or unethical with the gifts that the star bestows upon you and have too much ambition, there'll be like a very dramatic fall from grace. So it's like big gifts, like big possible like fall from those gifts. But people who have this are intelligent, steadfast. They tend to attract people to them, can be really popular. And then I wrote here some of the significations, the high propensity towards self-undoing. But that's just like if you have too much ambition and just like aren't appreciative of the gifts that you have. Also, so some of my favorite like traditional or ancient things about Mars they wrote here, and they just say like dissent, riots, sedition, and like everywhere you read stars that like have a big influence of Mars, I always talk about sedition, and I don't know why, I just like always think it just sounds so dramatic, so I'm into it. And yeah, so there's just like a lot of different significations just really reinforce that it's like a lot of gifts but a lot of responsibility, and if you don't take the responsibility, like there will be a dramatic fall. And then about 450,000 years ago, this star was the North Star. So again, I just like forget that things move around like that. And so just like, our North Star right now is Polaris. Like, what would it mean if our North Star was Aldebaran? And this was kind of like if you think about it just like metaphorically, if this was like the North that we looked upon and it had these significations, like how would that impact our society? I don't know. Just thing to think about. I don't have any answers. So example, Rudy Giuliani. I thought this was like such a perfect example of these like dramatic significations of Aldebaran. So he has the sun, Uranus, and Aldebaran in his 10th house, which is like public career stuff. And just like, listen to this: high material honors, but danger of losing them, danger from quarrels in the law, honor and riches ending in disgrace and ruin. Like, talk about someone who doesn't fit that more than Rudy Giuliani. He went from like most beloved mayor in America to like a laughing stock drunk guy. And it's just like, yeah, sometimes astrology is like very literal, and this is a great example of that. Oh, one thing so when you're looking these up, a lot of them talk about like health things like fevers, and all the stars like rule really specific parts of your body, like this specific vertebrae, and so they were used a lot in health astrology, which I don't know a ton about, but if any of you guys know anything about that, feel free to chime in. And also, to throw that out there, if you have Aldebaran like conjunct your sun, that doesn't mean that you will fall into ruin, but like, sometimes it does if you don't appreciate the honors and riches bestowed upon you, which I don't think Rudy Giuliani did. He thought he had limitless capital and public goodwill, and like no one does. So the next one is Regulus. Everyone wants Regulus. Regulus is like literally called the kingmaker, little king. It's the heart of the lion, the heart of the Leo constellation. And like literally, if you have this, like you are destined for great things. Whether you are like a king, or like in your life, you just are like kind of kingly. But like great things will happen for you. Super interesting. So in September 15th, 2011, Regulus moved from the last few degrees of Leo into Virgo. So I think it's really interesting to think about, what is it going to mean when this like kingmaker energy is brought to a sign of like service? So like Leo, of course it makes sense for it to be in Leo, but when it's in Virgo, like I just think that's really interesting, because usually like Virgos are the ones like behind the scenes that do all the thankless tasks to like keep everything running, that really goes unappreciated. So I think it's interesting that we have Regulus in this sign now, and I think it's interesting to think about like what's that going to mean going forward. All these like kids in Virgo born with this, like how is that going to manifest? How is that going to change that signification? So yeah, the star is like a huge giver of gifts. Again, there is an emphasis on service. Like when they say kingmaker, they want you to think like noble, like King Arthur type kingmaker, like kings that act with nobility. That isn't always the case. Like Donald Trump has like huge Regulus aspects, and I don't know if he acts with nobility, but it's just it like really brings like fame, fortune, and glory. And then something I thought was also interesting, given our current political climate, is that there was this like I don't know how to pronounce this word, Ninevite tablet, which is this like ancient tablet of prophecy that said, if the star of the great lion is gloomy, the heart of the people will not rejoice. And I just think that's interesting about this relationship between like the nobility of kings, and if kings are acting with people's best interest at heart, and if not, like what's that gonna do? So if you've seen any of my past presentations, I've talked about current politicians with Regulus aspects a lot, so I thought I would mix it up a little bit and talk about Gene Kelly, who has the Sun conjunct Regulus. And so one of the other aspects of Regulus that I forgot to mention is that it's like kind of like a rags to riches story. So like it's about like overcoming poor or common heritages to become like a superstar. So you'll see like a ton of celebrities that like came from like not that great of upbringing, like making it huge. And Gene Kelly is one of them. Like he was just like, his parents were like immigrants. He like would get beaten up at school for like liking to dance, and he only started dancing again once he like got buff enough, so he like beat people up back, which I just thought was really funny. And yeah, he became like a huge sensation, super charismatic, people loved him. Heidi Klum was another one, like her mother was a hairdresser, and like look at her now. Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher like had a ton of Regulus. Winston Churchill is a fascinating chart, which I did not put on here, but he has like a lot of fixed stars conjunct a lot of his different aspects. Let's see what else. So one other thing that Regulus can do is you can have like not it like can kind of like take away gifts as well. And I thought that was interesting because Gene Kelly towards the end of his life had this like massive fire, and he like burned his hand, almost died. He didn't die, but his whole mansion burned down. And then in the 2008 Universal Studio fire, he like lost a ton of his material. I just thought that was like interesting. Like what was going on? Was he not appreciating his gifts? Like what was going on with that? So just interesting to think about. So then we've got Antares, that star I was mentioning, the heart of the Scorpion. I don't know, I just feel like Antares is badass. You say it's like a rival of Mars, like that's how martial it is. And I don't know, I just like love all these like hot takes about martial things. Like natives are rash, ravenous, headstrong, and destructive to themselves by their own obstinacy. Like I don't know, I would like to be called ravenous and headstrong.
Megan,
Yeah,
excuse me. So
sure.
does this have anything to do with like where your planets are located in your chart as to what
Yeah,
star you? Okay,
yes, I put the degrees back here. So Aldebaran is at 10 degrees Gemini, Regulus is now at 0 degrees Virgo, Antares is at 10 degrees Sagittarius, and Fomalhaut is at 4 degrees Pisces. So if you have a planet in that degree, it's going to be impacted by that fixed star.
So that's where they're stationed now.
Yes, and will be for the next 72 years.
No, so my question was like, okay, so when you're born, you got all your planets and you got your planets, your elements and everything. So my question was, does it have something to do with what sign you were born in as to what star is gonna?
Yeah, so the stars never
Okay.
move. They are always, it's like they're called fixed stars because they're in a fixed degree of a sign. So it's not
Okay.
like this year it's going to be in 10 degrees Gemini, Aldebaran, and like next year it's going to be in Virgo. No, it is in 10 degrees Gemini. Like,
So that's the permanent placement?
yeah, definitely until the
Okay,
end of our
all
life.
right, thank you. That's what I needed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for not making that clear. That was a great question. Yeah. So Antares. So I think Antares is like particularly dramatic because we tend not to think of Sagittarius as like martial necessarily. The ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. And so it's like more like goodwill, philosophical, like optimistic, happy. And so I think this is like a great example of how a fixed star can like change a signification, because if you have your sun in 10 degrees Sagittarius and you're going to be like, why is this person like has this kind of commanding presence with like, you know, kind of this like martial edge, it's because Antares is there. And I just like harp on this one. My sister has this, and yeah, we like to, I definitely am like, you have the heart of a Scorpion, but with that like Sag, like read you energy. So yeah. Let's see. So yeah, so they said it rivaled Mars or was equal to Mars, and it has a red color in the sky, and it's like very bright in the sky. Bernadette Brady in one of her books says this is one of the 4 gates of the underworld. And then we're going to be talking about some of the upcoming astrology. And if you've been paying attention, you know that we are gearing up for our 3rd Uranus-Saturn conjunction. And Mars, that planet Mars, is going to be in Scorpio for like all of November, and it's going to be like activating all these things. It's going to be like a little intense. But then 3 days after the Uranus-Saturn conjunction, which is happening, I believe, on the 24th. So on the 27th, Mars is going to be conjunct Antares in Sagittarius. So I just feel like the next couple of months are going to be like really intense, and the fixed stars are playing a part of that, as we will talk about when we get to Algol. Don't worry, Kim. So I just like, I don't know, I have my eye on the next 2 months, but I have my eye on that conjunction between Mars and Antares on the 27th to kind of see what happens. So there's also the same warning here. So there's like a lot of potential, like more so than with Aldebaran and Regulus, that like warn you to be good and noble. Antares is like pretty intense star and like very military. So like there's a lot of warnings that like if you don't act with like nobility, that like you will be like, it will not be a good end for you.
Excuse me, Megan, I have a question. So this would be kind of like interpretation that I'm getting is kind of like Mars and Capricorn.
I don't know about that,
And
but I can
no,
see that.
and
I
that's
just
what go
I
ahead.
think it's like you need to kind of take them on their own. I think it's more Scorpio, to tell you the truth.
Scorpionic.
Yeah, because I mean it's the heart of the Scorpion. It's part of the Scorpio constellation, so it has that. I mean, I think, you know, Mars and Capricorn is great, but there's like an intensity to this that I think is more Scorpio.
I was just thinking, like, you know, how we discussed before, like Mars and Scorpio on the 10th. I mean, Mars and Cap in the 10th, that military type of structure and that, you know what I'm saying?
I think Mars in and of itself has strong military presence and associations. It's literally the martial star. But I think it might be like a mental trap to try and associate the stars with different signs.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so this just is like a very martial star. And yeah, so just keep that in mind. So then the example I have is Pablo Escobar. as you all know, he was a Colombian drug lord and called the King of Cocaine, and was the wealthiest criminal in history. And he amassed a net worth of 30 billion by his time of death, which would be like 64 billion these days. And he was like one of the richest people in the world, and he was like a drug cartel leader, which seems very Antares to me. He did have a pretty dramatic downfall. He was killed in his hometown by the Colombian National Police. But I think it's interesting is that his legacy is like he was a drug cartel, but like a lot of people really liked him and thought of him as a Robin Hood figure. So his legacy is like really interesting because although he totally killed a ton of people, he like provided a lot of amenities and structural support for poor people from where he came from, and like 25,000 people attended his funeral. And like there's lots of movies and stuff about him, so I just think that's really interesting that his MC, his son, that's like all conjunct Antares, so it's like very visual. But yeah, like honor and riches ending in disgrace and ruin, if rising or culminating. Great honor through violence. Like, yes, he did that. So I just think he's a really great example of that. All right. So then we have Fomalhaut. I don't know some of these names I like really don't know how to pronounce, so I apologize. I've read them, I've never like heard them pronounced. So if I'm doing it wrong and you know the right way, please let me know. So this is the only royal star that's not also a Bohemian star. And I feel like a lot of people overlook Fomalhaut because it's not as like martial and like bringer of riches. It's more like about altruism and like wisdom. A lot of people talk about Jesus with this star, I think just because it's like a fish and like, you know, there's a whole like Jesus relationship with fishes. I'm not really like super religious, so I don't know, but I just want to throw it out there. This tends to be like a big giver of creativity, but the person can be like kind of carried away by their creativity. There's a lot of like artistry and just talent and like spiritual connotation. And so a lot of like, I guess, more feminine stars and more like creative stars, the ancients like really hated. And I think it's just because it was like associated with femininity, as we'll talk about with some of the other ones. So just like keep that in mind if you read some of the resources that I give you, because I don't think that some of the malevolence that they say are actually there. But I do think if you get carried away in the waters of your own creativity, that could be more dangerous to yourself and like your mental health. So then I have for this Elvis Presley. He is obviously a very creative guy. And I think it's interesting. So like gain after many difficulties, and Elvis Presley didn't receive any formal music training. And he couldn't read music, and he like played by ear, and when he was younger all his teachers like told him that he had a terrible singing voice. And I do just think it's interesting. So like also Fomalhaut will give you like fame like beyond your lifetime, and I just think it's interesting for him because like so many people think he's like still alive or like have had Elvis sightings. So I think that's like interesting that we've got the moon, which is kind of like sometimes like deceptive or like changeable, and then you got all this creativity. So I just think that's like interesting that people like still thought he was alive. All right. Any questions?
Excuse me, Megan. So on that last star, when it said Pisces was next to it, you know, like
in Pisces, yes.
Okay, so since I'm a Pisces, does that affect me?
Let's see. Did you have any at 10 degrees Pisces?
I think mine was, oh geez, I don't know. Where would I find that?
let me just look. I think I saw your chart here.
Okay.
What was your last name again?
Romano.
No. So you don't have any planets near there. Okay, also I wrote down 10 degrees Pisces, but it's 3 degrees Pisces. So I'm really sorry about that. It's 3 degrees Pisces, not
Oh, no, that's
like I
okay.
wrote down. Yeah. And yeah, all of your planets are in the later degrees of Pisces, not in the early degrees.
Okay.
And kind of like what I said, the fixed stars have like a really limited orb. So when I think like precision, like literally it's like needs to be in the same degree, maybe 1 degree over for it to count.
Okay. Okay.
Like, great question.
Thanks.
All right. So the Bohemian Stars, we will not be talking about all of these. This is a lot. But yeah, these are all of them. Algol is 26 degrees Taurus. We will be talking about that. Alcylon, which is the Pleiades, which is the 7 sisters. That's at 0 degrees Gemini. And then Aldebaran, we already talked about that. We're going to talk about Sirius, which is at 14 degrees Cancer. Regulus, I don't know if we're talking about Regulus, and then Spica, which is 24 degrees Libra. But yeah, you can screenshot this or you can find them online. It's like you can literally, it's all on Wikipedia, the degrees. And even if you find like an old one, like an old, some people are like, oh, this is them in the 2000s, like it didn't move much, so that's fine. They don't move very fast. All right, Algol. So Algol is from the constellation Perseus. And I don't know if you know the Greek myth of Perseus. He was sent by Athena to behead Medusa so that he could like save the princess, get the girl, whatever. And Algol is the star that represents Medusa's head. So it has a strong association with beheading. The star itself is actually an eclipsing binary, and this is why ancient people noticed it, because it blinks. Every 6 to 8 hours, it blinks, so it changes in luminosity, and for roughly 8 hours, it's dimmer. So that changeability in the heavens was like very unnerving to people. So that's part of why there's such negative connotations with them. So why does changeability matter in the heavens? So I think this is a concept that's kind of hard to get our head around, but like back in the day of like Plato, like that's like what we're talking about. And even like ancient Egypt and like Babylonia, the heavens were supposed to be perfect and unchangeable. All the changeability was here on Earth. We live, we die, and like we are the ones changing, but the heavens are perfect and unchangeable. So to have a part of the heavens that was changeable was like really scary and was totally undermining everything. And that's why there was such a like negative connotation with the star. Definitely like every culture has strong associations with violence. Medieval Arabic commanders like wanted to ensure that no battle began when Algol was dim, when it was like light was weaker. Yeah, so it definitely has a strong association with like misfortune, violence, mob violence, things like that. But you know, in a personal chart, as I always like to say, like it just kind of like makes you a little more metal, I think. So like I think that there's like a really important gift that Algol can bring of like transmuting that darkness into light, and that like gift of inner alchemy. Like a lot of healers or counselors or people that like help people get through really difficult times have a strongly placed Algol. So it's like kind of two sides of the same coin. Like there's always going to be violence and difficulty in the world. There's always going to be people that'll help you through that. So I think that people, like, sure, it has this violence connotation when we're looking at like society as a whole, but as I said earlier, like we are experts in our own energy, and I don't think that we should internalize the like, oh, like I have a demon star in my chart. Like, no, you have the ability to like help people get through pain. You have the ability to like look at the darkness and like make something beautiful out of that, or to make something like really powerful and profound out of that. So the person I chose for that, just to like, you know, show you that we can bring alchemy to misfortune, is Frida Kahlo. So she had definitely a tragedy in her life for sure, but like the art she made out of that is like so profound and amazing. Like she was able to look into a lot of the darkness around her and like create so many amazing things out of that. And she did have a lot of like medical problems, but like a lot of her art and things that are touching even to this day came out of that pain and that kind of despair and that difficulty. She had this gift being able to look at that and then like transmute it in a way that was able to touch a lot of other people. So I just, you know, want you to know that if you have Algol, that doesn't mean that it's like the end all be all. I don't think there's any absolutes. I don't think any energy is like, energy is neutral, and it's like how we interact with it. Any questions on Algol? Yeah,
You know, I have a question.
I know.
So it's at 24 degrees, my ascendant. So I was like watching this one astrologer, you know, she wrote about it, and excuse me, I heard it's going to be very detrimental in November.
Yeah.
So I was just like,
we're gonna talk about the November part when we get to
okay.
the current weather. Yeah.
So does that mean, so okay, so maybe if I'm understanding you correctly and I'm absorbing what you're saying, interpreting it, so I have like healing properties. So I'm wondering if that's why I'm able to like give certain advices and really be, you know, empathetic and different things that, you know, my energy that, you know.
I know you've mentioned in the past that you want to pursue astrology. Sorry, I have to blow my nose. I'm a little bit head cold, so I apologize, guys.
It's okay.
I know you've mentioned in the past that you want to be an astrologer and that you're attracted to all these different healing modalities. And I think it's a great way to use this Algol energy. So I'm a professional astrologer, and people don't come to an astrologer because like things are going great in their life. They come because things are difficult and they need help and advice. And that's, you know, a great way to use. So the ability to help people through that is a great way to use this type of energy. You know, I have some difficult placements in my chart as well. Like Chiron is conjunct my ascendant, and you know, it's like, am I gonna let this like wound consume me, or am I gonna like use that to help people overcome their wounds? So things that can be like malefic, I don't think have to be malefic. I think that it's how we deal with it personally. So just because Algol means like beheading doesn't mean that you're going to be beheaded. It is different when it's like on a like macro mundane level than like personally. So I'm taking this course in astrological magic, and we talk about making talismans, and our charts is like a talisman. Like we are a talisman of our chart energy being put out into the world. So how do we want to put out that energy? Do we want to be like the ferocious demon star, or do we want to be someone that's like helping people transmute their own inner demons? That's still engaging in that energy, but you get to decide how you're going to put that out in the world, is how I like to think about it.
Because I'm also looking into Reiki.
Yeah, Reiki, yeah.
Yeah, so that was that was suggested to me, and I'm just like, I told you this whole past almost 2 years, like I'm really becoming in tune with my spirituality in different avenues. So
I think Reiki is a great way to help people overcome different things. I think that the world is like a little intense right now. So
Oh yeah.
to like help people transmute our inner pain, because everyone has pain and mental health struggles and anxiety right now. So anything we can do to help people transmute that, and even by us doing that for ourselves, we're helping other people around us. I think anything of that is using Algol in a productive way.
Right, especially because it's very powerful. You can transmute the energy, like you don't have to be directly sitting with the person. You can transmute the energy over like Zoom and things like that. So,
Exactly.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the next one is Pleiades, the seven sisters. So, like a lot of cultures have been obsessed with the seven sisters, and Alcylon is the brightest star of this little constellation. So, that's why they say Alcylon. Again, my pronunciation is terrible. So because this is seven stars, this orb is a little bit larger. I would say like up to 3 degrees for this one, because it's like a lot of stars, and this is just the brightest star in the constellation, in the grouping. So there's like a lot associated with Alcylon and the Pleiades about blindness. I don't really know why. I think it's with the myths around it, but like everything talks about blindness. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be blind. Personally, I have Alcylon conjunct my ascendant. Knock on wood, I'm not blind. And there's a sense of melancholy and wistfulness. A lot of people think it's because it comes right after Algol. So it's like you had the beheading or the trauma or the violence of Algol, then Alcylon is like processing that. So trying to deal with those difficulties and, feel that. Kind of what I was saying earlier about how the ancients were really prejudiced against women. There was like a lot of like evil meaning ascribed to this because of the femininity. And they would talk a lot about how it could be like associated with like femininity in men, aka like maybe homosexuality, and how that was evil, which do not ascribe to. Don't think that at all. But if you're reading about it, that's where a lot of those like negative connotations come from. So just like a good reinforcement that we do live in modern times, even though these texts are still valuable. They were written at a time where a lot of these things were not okay. And just to like bring your critical eye to this, that you can pursue what the actual meaning of the star is, instead of like the cultural, negativity or bias of the time. Yeah, so like I wrote down like not a good omen for regard of relationships with the opposite sex. Like, it just like says like a lot of things like that, which, are obviously not okay. And so when you are reading this, if you go to the websites I'm going to provide for you, just like think about that. And for all of them, if you are going to engage in traditional or more ancient manuscripts, like you just need to think about these things and know that we are modern people, and so we don't need to bring these biases with us to the modern period while still taking something from that. Other than that, it's said to have like a sweet influence on people. And yeah, so I think that a lot of the stars that are more feminine aren't considered as much for the ancients, but I still think that they're important. So I thought this was like an example. So Anne Frank has it conjunct Jupiter, and I don't know. I was tearing up a little bit about choosing this chart last night, because the interpretation for Alcylon conjunct Jupiter, it's like banishment and imprisonment, and we all know what happened to Anne Frank. And I just thought it was interesting because she has Alcylon conjunct Jupiter, which is a sense of optimism It's in the 10th house. So a lot of people saw that if they read her book and her diary. And I don't know, her last line before she was taken, discovered and taken, was like, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. And it's just like sad. And so I feel like that optimism mixed with that melancholy, because we know what happens to her. So I just thought this is like a really powerful example of like a heightened Alcylon or Pleiades in a chart. So to move on to Sirius, the dog star, Canis Majoris. So everyone has really liked that because I think people have always liked dogs. And a lot of people, like back in the day, like Kant thought that Sirius was the central sun of the Milky Way. So they like literally thought it was the center of our universe and that it was like the center that we all revolved around. And it has significations that kind of like, you know, embody that, like high ambition, pride, like renown, wealth. And it's supposed to also indicate like a famous death with continued notoriety. Like you will live far, your name will live far beyond your actual lifespan. Also could be like dog bites, which I think is interesting. This is the dog one. So I thought Michael Jordan was an interesting example of Sirius conjunct the ascendant, because like, you know, sports are kind of our, you know, are kind of our like military in modern day. And because Sirius is supposed to bring just like so much talent, like Michael Jordan has so much talent. Like, so I'm like looking for charts and like looking at people's stuff this week, and like Michael Jordan's Wikipedia page is like so long. It's like so long because he's done so much stuff and he's like so much talent and just like the awards and like everything. And yeah, so he's like a good example of like a really good placed Sirius, just like lots of talent and lots of ability to capitalize on that. So then Spica and Arcturus. So people will talk more about Spica, but they are in the exact same degree, which is why I put them both here. But like really it's all about Spica. Spica is the bigger star, it's like the more dominant star. So it's gonna just like it's gonna be Spica, not Arcturus, but they are in the same degree, which is why I wanted to bring it up. And they're the wheat of the Virgo constellation. So again, this is one of those like more feminine stars that I like. It just like it doesn't give as much renown as some of the other like more military ones, but this is supposed to give also a sweet disposition, a love of art and science. They're supposed to be like into justice and like, you know, more tending to the earth. Then yeah, and so then let's see. Okay, so I thought this was interesting. So Warren Buffett, he's got a lot going on in his chart, but we're just focusing on this part. So he has Venus conjunct the MC, but Spica is conjunct his Venus. And I mean, he's like super wealthy, so I think that's really interesting. But also like people like seem to really like him, even though he's like a bajillionaire. And I just think it's interesting that he has this like sense of inherent goodwill towards him, even though he's like a billionaire. And I feel like part of that is from the like Spica Venus influence into that. Any other questions before I move on? Sorry, I know I'm kind of going fast through this. So these are the stars that I don't really use. So I don't have like personal experience with them. So these are just kind of like summaries of them. You can screenshot this or look it up on YouTube later. But yeah, I don't really know too much about these. These are literally just like things I've pulled from my different readings, but I don't have like personal anecdotes about them. Again, if any of you guys do, feel free to jump in. But again, kind of like I said, what you want to do is in like a chart software, you just want to like see if fixed stars match with like certain planets or aspects of your chart. And if they do, like look up what that means and see if that changes the signification. That's like a little bit different than the degree that that was in. So like, you know, for example, for me personally, my ascendant's in Gemini, but that Alcilo and Pleiades definitely like changes, it like brings more emotion to like a Gemini chart. Because like Gemini is like, no, emotions aren't necessarily associated with them. It's more like intellectual, like, you know, chatty things like that, which I definitely have. But you know, the Alcylon definitely like gives it a little twist that if you were just looking at the ascendant without that, you would be like, why doesn't this match exactly? So then these are a lot of resources if you're into fixed stars. Astrology King is like the best. I love him. He's like, I can't believe he puts all this information out for free. If he made a book, I would buy it immediately. He's got lots of information on his website. I think he's like a great resource for like everyone for lots of different things. Like if you're into aspects, I know I think Jay, you brought that up. He's got so much information on his website about aspects and about like transits that I just think is like really great for people trying to learn these different things. Constellation of Words is really great for fixed stars, and if you're more interested in like traditional stuff. And then Skyscript, that's like a little bit more difficult of reads, but it's also really good. It's definitely more intermediate, and they bring in a lot of like the more ancient texts like Agrippa, things like that. So, but William Lilly. So if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend that. These are books. So the Agrippa book of occult philosophy is so much about astrology in there, and you can get it for free on esotericarchives.com. And I think that it's like a fine translation. I definitely use that one as well. I have a hard copy, but I like the online one. The Fixed Stars and Constellations in Astrology by Vivian Robson, and then Bernadette Brady is like really good. So, and then a lot of the information I pulled was like from all of these sources, like all mixed up. But a lot of like when I would put up a chart and just like show like Sun conjunct Aldebaran or whatever, a lot of those were from the Astrology King. I like cannot say how much I like that website and recommend it.
Megan, so
Yeah.
I've been on the Astrology King. So one thing about the Astrology King, it's like you would be surprised the wealth of information. Like I have Neptune conjunct Sun, different things going on, different, you have hot aspects, oppositions, squares, any of that. You'd be surprised the wealth of information that's on that website. Like you can find almost anything.
I agree, which is why I think it's a great resource for people learning for sure. And the aspects too. I think they're great. They should like have a Patreon and charge us all like $50 a month, but they don't.
And I know, and it's like right, it's free, and it's just like a wealth of knowledge. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. So 2 endorsements to everyone else. Like absolutely should go there. And if I'm gonna look after this and see if there's a way I can give him some money because he should get it. All right. So current weather, upcoming transits. So this is what the moon. We already have the new moon in Libra upcoming this week. Full moon in Aries. I have so much Aries in my chart. I love this full moon because like I feel like it's like a little energy beam to get me through the rest of the year till it's my season again. Then we got the new moon in Scorpio, and then we've got an eclipse on the 19th, which is the full moon in Taurus, which is definitely going to have a strong Algol influence. So we're just like throwing it out there. Mars is going into Scorpio on the 31st, and I think this is going to be like a little bit of a rough time. Mars in Scorpio is like super powerful, and it's going to be like squaring everything. So this whole year, part of why we've had this like volatility is because we've had this in the background just going on, this Uranus Saturn square. And it started like literally like the insurrection that happened in January. It's kind of like the kickoff of this. So that's like the energy we've got going on. And I know there's been all this talk about like supply chain stuff and things like that. And I just like kind of feel like that story is gonna like become really exacerbated during this. And the third Saturn Uranus square is happening like I think it's like the day before Christmas or like right around Christmas. But then all of next year it's gonna be like really close. So even though we don't have another direct hit after December, this like just tense energy of Saturn Uranus like fighting is gonna be kind of all next year as well. But the reason why I think that November is going to be like particularly difficult is that if you have any fixed sign aspects in your chart, I think it's gonna be like a little intense. Is that Mars is like kind of like kicks stuff up. It's like an instigator, and because it's really powerful, it has the ability to like punch them.
Yeah,
So-
good for me. Good for me. Oh my goodness.
So I mean, I have like a lot of like my Saturn is in Scorpio. I got Pluto in Scorpio. I got my South Node in Scorpio. So just like look at the house that it's in and like see what you can do to like fortify yourself. So my advice, because again, I don't want to just be like terrible things are happening, like be afraid, is I think that like things are gonna come up that's gonna be challenging. And I think you're gonna be challenged. And so I think the way to like remediate this is to be like kind of be like that, what's it called? Like the objective observer and be like, okay, why am I feeling challenged right now? Like what's actually going on? And I think having like a flexibility and openness to meet these challenges are going to be like really key, because that's going to allow you to kind of go deep and be able to kind of like see what's there and just kind of like let it come up. Like whatever it is, it's like relationships, like let the stuff come up so that you can look at it and deal with it. I think that's the only way that's going to be like really helpful to get through this. Like, I'm not going to lie, this is probably the most challenging month of the year. But I don't want to be like doom and gloom, but I do want you to be prepared, because that's what I think astrology is great for, is to like know things going into it.
Well, Megan,
Yeah.
so these past, so like this Pisces moon, and then we had, okay, so we got this Mercury retrograde in Libra.
Oh,
and we had
also,
the-
Mercury is going direct on Monday. Thank God. This one has been brutal.
but it's in the shadow period for another 7 to 10 days. So
Yeah, but like I'll take what I can get. I'll take what I can get.
but I'm just saying this, like, I don't know how it's been for you or anybody else, but this Mercury, this retrograde and
Oh.
this and these ascension symptoms and everything, it's just like my sleep schedule has been totally out of whack.
Yeah, I think this has been like a really brutal Mercury in retrograde. Like, just quick side personal anecdote. I've had this like whole phone issue. Like, look at my phone. I don't know if you can see it. It's like cracked and like destroyed. And I've been trying to get a new phone since August. It's been like this whole issue. And all these things happened during this Mercury retrograde. And guess when my new phone was finally being delivered? Literally on Monday, right after everything goes direct. I was like, oh, sometimes astrology is literal. And that's just like one example. And so you're right, there's going to be a post shadow, but I do think that things are going to like lighten up a little bit on Monday when things go direct, like fingers crossed. But I do think that this eclipse is going to be like a little intense, because Algol is going to be right there. And also the nodes are currently in Mercury and Gemini, or not Mercury and Gemini, Sagittarius and Gemini. And right at the start of 2022, they're shifting over to Taurus and Scorpio. So I think that this little full moon eclipse is going to give us a little taste what this next nodal cycle is going to be about. So just like see what comes up around then. And I think this is going to be like the start of a story that's going to like unfold over the next like 1.5, 2 years.
So this Saturn and Uranus, they're essentially like both like they're fighting for control, because Saturn is old ways and Uranus is about evolution and change, and we're in Aquarius, or we're going into Aquarius. We're leaving that Pisces, thank goodness. So can you give like thoughts on that?
So yeah, like I said, they are like been tense all year. We're now they're so if you see Saturn is going direct on the 11th, and I think Uranus just went direct. So they were retrograde, now they're direct, so they're moving forward and they're moving towards their next square. But Mars, a super powerful Mars, is going to be like grinding on them. So there's just gonna be like a lot of like tension and a lot of like feeling like you're just like uncomfortableness. And so if you have fixed sign planets, or if you look at your chart and you see where the fixed sign houses are, those are the areas of your life where there's going to be that tension.
And
Every
Pluto
time,
just go ahead.
oh yeah, and every time the moon goes into a fixed sign, which is every 2.5 days, it's going to like kind of exacerbate it a little bit. So I feel like we're really going to feel that. And I think there's going to be some like outward expressions of that. And I don't know exactly what they're going to be, but I think it's just going to be like a stressful month. So anything you can do to prepare for that now. And I think also changing your mindset to one that's more flexible and more open will be helpful. And if you can like plan in some like leeway or extra time, I think that's going to be helpful.
And we just had Pluto just went direct too. So that was oof.
On the 7th, yep. So yeah. I know. I like every astrologer for the past 2 years has said that this is gonna be like the toughest month. And I agree, but like you guys are here because you needed to hear this message. You're gonna get through it. You're gonna be open. You're gonna like let things come up so that you can address them. And I have faith in you guys. So then just some like extraness. So I have highlighted here the squares that Mars is going to make. So it's the 9th to the 11th. Mars in Scorpio is going to square Saturn. The 10th in particular, Mercury is going to be there as well. And Mercury likes to amplify things. So I feel like the 10th is going to be like not a fun day. So, you know, if you could like just clear your schedule or make it so that your big work events are like after that, great. I don't even know what day of the week that is. Let me check. Maybe it's a weekend, which would be great. It is a Wednesday. So that week you're gonna want to plan a lot of your tough things for right afterwards. So yeah. So like for me, what I'm doing, usually I'm like pretty social, but my 6th house has a lot of Scorpio stuff in it, which is health stuff. So the 2 weekends, the 13th and the 20th, I've literally written in my calendar like no plans, because I feel like I'm gonna need time to like recharge. Like my day-to-day life is being an acupuncturist. So I'm my only person. So like I don't want to like get sick and have to take off work and like I don't know, all this different stuff. So I'm consciously trying to slow my life down a little bit so that I have the time and the space to be able to handle whatever comes up. So just like think about where the Scorpio part of your chart is, or what part of your chart is being activated, and try and think about where you can create some space in order to accommodate whatever happens. And then the 16th to the 18th, Mars is going to oppose Uranus. So I just think it's going to be kind of an intense month. But you guys are prepared. You know it's coming. I like to say that astrology is like checking the weather. So now you all know to bring your umbrella. Any questions? I threw a lot at you guys.
Yes, I was trying to interject at one point. The conversation that you just had with the other gal,
Sure.
a lot of those things, any type of fact or any type of sentence was something that I couldn't follow. You know what I mean? Like this one is in this house and this one is here and this one, where do you actually start? Or is there a particular book, or are there older videos that would actually um, focus on the topic that we just had?
Yeah, so I do have some other videos that break down like signs, houses, aspects, things like that, which I will send to you. Beginner places to start. There are some great books, like Stephen Arroyo has a lot of great beginner books. Astrologers that I love that have great introductory courses are Austin Coppock and Kelly Surtees. Kelly Surtees is really great for true intro stuff. And then Austin Coppock's a little bit more advanced. The website, the Astrology King, is really great for kind of supplementing, I want to do a little deeper dive in this aspect. So why don't I'll stop this recording. Oh, wait, let me just do this. And then I'll stop the recording and then we can look at your house and then just see which houses are going to be hit by the fixed sign so that you know where to look. How's that?
Thank you. Thank you. Sounds great.
All right. So this is my contact info. skyaboveastrology.com. That website is actually not up yet because I keep saying I'm going to get it up, but I don't. But the email is up if you have any questions. If you want to give me any money for Venmo, this is a lot of work and it helps me keep going. My Venmo is skyaboveastrology. And yeah, so I'm going to stop this share and then we'll just look at your houses real quick. All right, let me see this. All right, share. Oh, wait, did I